Howdy folks, it's AJ the Hunting Gear Guy, and this is the Mossberg 464. It's a lever action centerfire rifle. This one's in 30-30. I think all of them were in 30-30. Maybe they thought they would get into some other stuff, but they just didn't. And I think it's just bad timing. This was released in 2008, and 2008 was kind of a weird year. I'll talk about it a little bit more towards the end, but for now, this thing's empty, so why don't we take a closer look at it. Starting at the back of the rifle, we have a nice rubber butt pad. It actually blends in really nicely with the stock there. We have a steel sling swivel stud at the bottom, which harkens back to a year when manufacturers actually gave a shit about stuff that didn't break. Well, and then I say that, and then there's that new ass checkering that doesn't fare very well. This stuff tends to break off. I don't know if it's laser cut or if it's just like milled out, but it is not as strong as like traditional checkering. Then we've got kind of our action there. We have a lever safety, so you do need to press that in. Lever, depends on where you are in the country. So you'll have to press that in if you want it to fire. And then there's a bunch of other safeties on this thing. We have an active safety on the back here. This is actually still going to allow us to fire, but it's going to act as a hammer block. So on fire, it'll allow that hammer to go all the way forward. If it's on safe, you see it still fires, but now that hammer can't hit the transfer block on this thing. So a bunch of safeties on this thing, right? We've got a rebounding hammer, so the hammer doesn't rest on the firing spring. Once it's done firing, it just kind of hangs back and doesn't touch that firing pin at all. We also have a transfer block, so if this thing is not in battery, that firing pin can't be hit because it needs this transfer block in there and that pin to be available. If it's sitting too low, it won't get hit, and if the lever isn't being pushed in, it won't get hit. So that's one safety. There's another one also, the firing pin itself. The lever has to be in a certain position for that firing pin to go all the way forward. So I don't know how many safeties we're at, but lots. Now along the top, we have an angle eject. How does an angle eject work? Well, let me just throw a dummy round in there. Pops up onto the lifter, in she goes, and then when it ejects, it kind of pops out. That's a little bit heavier than an empty, so it's going to eject a little bit weirder, but it pops out at kind of an angle. And the reason for that is so that you can run a scope, and this one is drilled and tapped for scope. Base is on here. You can put a scope on. You can fold this little rear sight, or you can pop it up for the rear sight there if you want. Although the rear sight is kind of hurting. It's a pretty simple affair. Now this fore end also has that new style checkering. There's a screw missing here, but that would be where your barrel band would be. And then we have a brass bead on the front there to let us go. So our magazine tube here will hold 6 in the tube and then 1 in the chamber for a total of 7 rounds. A couple of other quick things to mention. The hammer is threaded, so you can put a little spur that goes to the side so that when you put a scope on, you got a little extension to cock the hammer. Even though you don't really need it, I guess. Like, you could run this thing hammer back and then just throw the safety on and run it that way. You don't really necessarily need to run the hammer down. Although you could run the hammer down and safety off and then just cock it when you're ready to fire. So a couple of different options, I guess, if you were to look at how you use the safety on this thing. Personally, if I wasn't running a scope, I'd rather just run it on fire mode all the time with the hammer down, and then when I'm ready to shoot my deer, it's nice and quiet. Versus, it's kind of hard to run this safety without making a lot of noise. So I think I'd rather just pull that hammer back and get it ready to fire then. Now, if you're running a scope, well, you're probably going to want to run this. It's going to be easier to run the safety than to run your finger along the side to hit the hammer. So I'd rather just, get ready on the deer, click it forward, and fire all in kind of one shot. So I hit up the range with this thing recently, and a couple of things I really noticed. One, just loading it like loading the first round, okay, that's fine. Loading the second, you kind of, as you push down, it kind of like cams past the rim there, and it's kind of a pain in the butt to do that. And sometimes it's just hard putting them in there. And this is no fault of this rifle. It's missing a screw right here. And this fore end kind of guides that magazine tube and keeps it like locked in the correct place. I mean, yes, you're also, you know, tightened on here and you're aligned right there, but you do need some alignment at the back to keep that magazine tube straight. It wasn't straight, and I had rounds hanging up. I didn't know what it was. That was one of the reasons. The other one was the follower. The plastic follower had too much resistance. Like it was like bowed out a little bit too much, and it had too much resistance going down the tube. So I sanded that out, and now it feeds no problem through there. So that was something that I learned. Accuracy wise, I put a big bad scope on here. I got about 2 inches at 100 meters, 100 yards, same thing. 2 inches is the group that I got with Federal 150 grain projectiles. It's okay. It's fine for deer, especially for the, like distances that you're going to be shooting 30-30 with. Inside 200, right? You're not going to be taking a long bomb with 30-30. It's pretty slow. It doesn't really deliver a lot of energy out pretty far, and that's one of the reasons why people got away from lever guns, right? Is because the bolt action rifles could run better BC bullets, stuff that would shoot further and take their energy farther, and more accurate as well. Not that the accuracy is like 2 inches is enough for most hunters, for actually most hunting. If you're going to be doing most of your stuff within 100, you could run with these things and it would be just fine. It would be just the same thing pretty much as a bolt action. But if you ever have to take like a long range poke, that bolt action is going to have a little bit more accuracy that you might need. But let's get back to that timing question. So when this thing came out in 2008, lever actions weren't worth that much. And on the used market, oh my God, they're selling for a huge discount. You could get like a Winchester 94 or a Marlin 336 for $400 on the used market because people were going to bolt action rifles. The bolt action rifles, CNC machining and production was getting to the point where they could afford to sell them for a lot less, and they could do a lot more. So the used market was full of these things, and Mossberg decided to release this exactly at that time. Bad timing. Fast forward to today, 2024. Now lever action rifles are $1,000 plus, and new ones $1,500 usually, like Canadian dollars, right? Most of these things are right around $1,500. A Marlin 336 now made by Ruger. Okay, yeah, Ruger their quality will probably be better. But the price is also quite a bit higher, $1,500. Browning BLRs, $1,500. Chiappas, $1,500. Pedersolis are $1,800. Henrys are $1,500. Rossies, you can get the pistol cartridge ones for $1,200. But that's still really high. Like these things, when they came out, were for something. They were like reasonably priced. I think, and in fact, if you look at SHOT Show this year, there was a bunch of lever action rifles. Smith & Wesson brought out their new one, and a couple of the other manufacturers were showing prototypes of lever action rifles because these things are now so expensive on the used market and on the new market. They are more complicated to make, so yeah, I guess understandably they should cost more. And the people who enjoy them, I don't know, one person I was talking to was saying that Yellowstone, because Yellowstone's so popular, people want to get like a lever action rifle like the guys on Yellowstone kind of a thing. I don't know if it's that or if it's like other market forces, but they're very expensive. I think if Mossberg was to bring this out in 2024, 2025, they would have a huge hit because they would be able to undercut everyone. And the rifle itself is still pretty good. Like I really like the smoothness of the lever is actually really good. The trigger was not bad at all. Let's just try that right now. But everything on this rifle was really nice for the price. Given again for the price. The checkering was not quite as nice as some of the stuff you find out there, but everything else is pretty good. Let's pull a trigger on this thing and see. Oh, you know what? Let's get that lever in. Otherwise, it's not going to work. 3 pounds. 3 pounds is what we're getting off this thing, which is I mean, it's a single action trigger, but yeah, there's our first stage, and There's our second stage right there. So pretty nice trigger pull on it. The mechanism on it is, again, not that bad. Some people might find that they have to work them in. That's one thing I read online is some people, this is a used one that I got, but some of these from new were quite rough. This one feels really well worked in. It doesn't look too abused. So I guess that some of these would probably work in fairly easily. Mossberg should probably re-release this. I mean, it's not quite as nice as some of the other lever actions out there. But if they could bring it in at $1,000, $800, boy, they'd sell a ton. Anyways, thanks for watching.